Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. So today in the garage I have my 97 Jeep Wrangler, and today's project is going to be installing about a 2.5 inch lift kit. So the goal of this video, I'm going to show you what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a set of Man Emu springs and some other components. I'll give you a brief overview of that. This video is not going to be a step-by-step how to install a lift kit, but more before and after, with a summary of any obstacles I ran into, any challenges, some special things you might need to know, and then some feedback on how all the components work together. So if that's what you're interested in, stick around, we'll get into it. Okay, let's talk briefly about what components I'm going to use. I didn't buy this as a kit. I kind of pieced this together based on some components that I wanted to use, combined with some components that I already had. But I do recommend, if you have nothing, it's often a good idea to just buy a pre-made kit. But with that said, I'm going to run the Man Emu springs. They always get rave reviews for their ride quality. Probably the one tricky bit is that Man Emu has several different spring part numbers for the TJ platform that are slightly different lengths and slightly different spring rates depending on the configuration of your Jeep and the weight. Now my Jeep is a TJ, so it's not the LJ. I've got a soft top and full doors, and at the moment I don't have heavy bumpers and winches and that sort of thing, though I may add those in the future. Before I've installed anything, I've taken some before measurements front and rear, and my goal is to be able to give you a summary with the 2933 front springs and the 2941 rear springs, at least on my Jeep. How much lift did that achieve from a bone stock suspension that has 137,000 miles on it? From there, I'm going to use a set of Bilstein shocks, front and rear. I already have an adjustable front track bar that I recently installed while servicing the front end steering components and ball joints and that sort of thing. So already an adjustable track bar there, and some adjustable quick disconnect sway bar end links. I'm going to add an adjustable rear track bar. This is a fairly inexpensive one from Rough Country, but I do like this adjustment style. I'll go ahead and call that out. You see some of these where it's just adjustable from one side with the jam nut. The problem with that, every time you want to make an adjustment, you have to take the bolt out and take the track bar down, spin it in or spin it out, and then retighten the jam nut. This style with the adjusting sleeve in the middle works much like your tie rod adjusting sleeves in your steering. What's nice is that you don't have to take the bolts out of either end of the track bar. You can just turn the adjusting sleeve in the middle one way or the other to either lengthen or shorten the track bar. So it just makes adjustments a little bit easier, and I like this style of a track bar. My stock original bump stops are long gone, so I have some extended bump stops. These, I'm not sure if these are going to be just right or too long or too short. I'll have to take some measurements once I get things installed, but I have some replacement bump stops. In the rear, these are just from Zone Offroad, but they are an extended length rear sway bar end link. Pretty basic there. And then I anticipate having some driveline vibration, so I have a transfer case drop kit. That's from Zone Offroad as well, just a pretty basic. Can't remember if I went 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch, or might be 1 inch. Tcase Drop, so I'll give you some feedback on that as well. So not too complicated. I'm going to get into the installation. Like I said, I'll cut in and give you some tips or tricks if I run into any challenges as we go through the installation. Then afterwards, I'll show you how much lift I got, both front and rear. Okay, so here's the after. Have the lift completely installed at this point and the new tires on. I took some before and after measurements so I could calculate how much lift I got, both front and rear. I was shooting for 2.5 inches of lift. This seems to have netted out at the moment at 3.5 inches. A little more than I had intended. But my Jeep is in its lightest configuration at the moment. Stock bumpers, spare tire taken off because the new 32 doesn't fit. Soft top, it is full doors. So I have a feeling that once I add a front bumper and a winch, and then maybe a rear bumper and a tire carrier, it's actually going to put me right where I want it to be. These tires are a 265/75/16 on the Rubicon Moab wheels. The tire and wheel combo works out. I weighed them at 75 pounds. So I intentionally wanted something that didn't stick out too bad. Kind of prefer that a bit more stock of a look. Everything seems to fit really well. Haven't observed any rubbing. Obviously I have plenty of room in the wheel wells with this amount of lift and that tire size. These work out to essentially a 32. A couple of key things for you to know. To get the front springs in, I could not get enough droop out of the suspension without taking the lower control arms off. I was replacing those anyway. I have just some stock replacement control arms. One challenge you'll run into is that this frame end of the lower control arm, that bolt, in the stock configuration, the bolt comes out on the inboard side, and then that creates a problem because it hits the draft shaft. So then the draft shaft has to come down. And that triggers the might as well. I don't know if you can see that. I had replaced all the other U-joints on the Jeep, but I had not done that one yet. So while I had that out, went ahead and did the front draft shaft U-joint. When I put these bolts back in, I put them in from the outboard side. So if I ever have to get it back out, it will be a little bit easier. You run into the same challenge on the passenger side, except on that side, you don't hit the draft shaft, but you will hit the exhaust pipe. So then I had to disconnect the exhaust to get clearance to get that bolt out again so I could get enough droop so that I could put the springs in. Just adds a bit more time and complexity than what you think it should sometimes. The other thing, so you can see the bump stop extensions that I got. My stock bump stops were corroded and gone. So this replaces those, and plus they are an extension as well. Getting these in, these are like a polyurethane kind of material, very, very difficult. Even applying a little bit of petroleum jelly and some lube, I had to use a floor jack, one of my floor jacks over here, and a piece of wood, and essentially jack it up and press it in to the cup that it fits into. Just very difficult to get that to seat in. But once they pop in, they're very secure in there. And I ran into that on all four corners, so that wasn't unique to just one side. That was all the way around. Not required for you, but while I was at it, also replaced the sway bar frame bushings. This is some Moog bushings. Actually, the stock ones really weren't in that bad of shape, but in for a penny, in for a pound, to go with all the new steering components that I have in here as well. Under the back of the Jeep, just a tip, I would recommend installing the shock lower mounting bolt first. The upper, I don't know if I'll be able to get an angle on this. There it goes. So the uppers are that dog bone setup. However, if you put those in first, this lower shock is actually at just a bit of an angle, and you can't get enough angle on it to get the bolt to go all the way through. So take a tip from me and install that first, and then the uppers, and life will go easier for you. Looking upwards, so this is the gas tank skid plate, and that is the rear track bar. If you can see, maybe not, it is a very, very close fit. It may not actually be rubbing, or maybe it's just a very light rubbing. Kind of see maybe a spot there where it rubbed. This seems to be a fairly common issue. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess there's a slight pinion angle change. I disconnected the, let's see if you can see up there. There are bolts that hold the skid plate up. There's 2 there. There's 1 there. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 back here. I'm going to see if I can get this skid plate to come backwards just a little bit to gain some clearance to the track bar. However, I was unsuccessful. I don't think I gained any additional clearance. However, after driving this and doing some light off-roading with it, that does not appear to be causing a problem. I don't hear any banging or clanking. So I'm going to keep an eye on it, and hopefully it doesn't prove to be a larger issue down the road. Just out of curiosity, before I put the transfer case drop kit in, I took it for a drive and did confirm that I had some pretty severe driveline vibrations. I installed this 1-inch Tcase Drop just from Zone Offroad. Obviously this is a really basic thing, nothing special here. And that made a significant difference. I'd say it made it 80% better. Slight look at the drive shaft angle. Very livable at this point, and no issues with it shifting or getting it into full drive or low range. No issues with that, so I'm pretty satisfied from that perspective. Here's one more look. This is the rear suspension. You can see the clearance between the coil spring bucket up there and the tire. Have some clearance there. And of course the new Bilstein shocks. I used the Zone Offroad extended rear sway bar end links. See if you can, the lighting's not very good under the Jeep. No major complaints there. And you can see the adjustment for the track bar there in the rear. Okay, here's a look at the suspension. Not completely flexed out, but just to give you an idea of how the back tire is fitting. Should tuck up inside the fender pretty well. I don't know. We got some clearance up there. Same thing back here. So I think that's going to fit pretty well. Still have the sway bars connected, so it's not stuff in the front but so much. And that's of course not at steering lock either, but we have pretty good room all the way around. And then getting some decent suspension travel out of the rear. So pretty happy with that, just goofing around on a power line trail. The other important piece to talk about is the ride quality, because that is still somewhat important. Obviously it's a TJ, and no suspension is really going to fundamentally change that it rides and drives like a TJ. But overall, I'm extremely pleased with how this suspension rides. Obviously, I'm comparing it to the stock 27-year-old, 137,000 mile original suspension, which was surely worn out. This composes itself, I'd say it rides a little more firmly, but not harsh. I'm also happy to report that even when hitting significant bumps and that sort of thing, the death wobble is gone. That is largely attributed to all the new suspension components that I installed. The new ball joints, new track bar, new drag link, and tie rod ends. I'm happy that I got that sorted out before I put the lift on. No issues whatsoever. I've been driving it around quite a bit today, running some errands, I'm going to do rear brakes on it. The rear drum brakes need to be done, so I've been picking up some parts for that. So there we go. That's the Man Emu and Bilstein shock lift on the Jeep. If you have any questions, feel free to post those in the comments below. As always, I'll answer anything that I can. If you have any questions about the lift, obviously this wasn't a step-by-step how to install on the lift. So if you have any questions or you've run into a challenge, post that below. And if I can help, I certainly will try to. As always, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Scruff's Garage. We'll see you next time.